Welcome to Unpack the NUMAC, where we dive into the inner workings of the conference, the stories behind the stats, and the prestigious awards that make the NUMAC a powerhouse in Division III. We'll celebrate the academic excellence of our student athletes, the incredible leadership of our coaches and administrators, and break down the path to becoming national champions. It's a lot to unpack, and we're here to do it. It's time to unpack the NUMAC.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Unpack the NUMAC. My name is Lindsay Colbert, and I'm joined today by Lynn Hersey, the head basketball coach at Smith College. Thanks for joining us today, Lynn.
Yeah, Lindsay, thanks for having me. Thanks to the NUMAC for putting on this podcast. It's great to hear stories from coaches across the NUMAC and how the programs are doing. So appreciate all the effort.
And we're so excited to chat with you today. You're one of the most accomplished coaches in Division III, National Coach of the Year. You've turned Smith into a national powerhouse. But I want to go back to your roots a little bit. You were recently inducted into the Maine Sports Hall of Fame. Can you talk about growing up in Maine and where your passion for basketball came from?
Yeah, I grew up in a small little town called Dexter. It's actually famous for making Dexter shoes, which was a big company in the 80s. And my mom worked in the school system, and my dad had a sales job in town. And I have an older sister named Karen and a younger brother named Brian. And certainly, like, family was super important. You know, we spent a lot of time on the weekends visiting our grandparents, and just having like meals together, and a lot of really good, wholesome conversation about how we were all doing and what the days looked like, right? And and that's what Maine is to me. It's really rooted in community. It's rooted in, you have this circle of neighbors and friends you have growing up with, and you show up for each other every day. And so I grew up with those values. My parents did a tremendous job really instilling that and modeling it. And when I think about Maine, I have a lot of pride. Growing up there, it's a state I go back in vacation to every year, even though I live in Massachusetts now. It's just a big source of pride for me.
It's a beautiful state up there. You also had the opportunity to play collegiately at Plymouth State, so you went south a little bit. But can you talk about your college experience and how that maybe has shaped your coaching or your coaching?
I think my days at Plymouth, what I really pulled from that was that I was involved in a lot of different things. I was obviously on the basketball team, but I went to school, and my first thought was, I love sort of medicine and anatomy, and I love sports. So I went to college thinking like maybe I want to do something in the sports medicine field, and started to look into that a little bit more, and did a lot with the sports teams that way. And then I was on work study. And so I got a job working for the athletic director in the main office. And I would go in and do special projects for him. His name is Steve Bamford. His son is actually the AD at UMass, right down the road from me.
Well, I know Steve well. I worked for him at the ECAC. So that's
yes, right. So what, it was really eye-opening to me to understand that sport had a lot of different avenues of careers and things that, were interesting to me. So I think Plymouth really gave me the playing sort of mindset of what it's like to be a collegiate player, the responsibilities of that, the leadership aspects of that. But then I kind of developed a very strong work ethic and appreciation for the medical side of sport. And then certainly the sports administration side, working for him. I worked for him for 4 years, and, probably 10 hours a week. It was what the work study job required. But I enjoyed the work there. I enjoyed the projects, and, kind of seeing this intersection of like business with sport. So ultimately, I left Plymouth really with the idea that I wanted to do like sports administration, and I got accepted. I went to the ECAC actually and did an internship there for a year. And then
the S. Bushnell intern.
Yes, I was. I was a
Hey,
Bushnell
East
intern.
Bushnell interns unite.
Yes, and that, it was such a cool experience because, as you know, you're interning with a few other, um, sort of newly graduated undergrads, and you're kind of figuring out what you want to do next. And Cape Cod in the spring and fall, beautiful. Cape
Beautiful.
Cod in the winter, you're really you're happy to stay in the office, right? But ultimately, it was a really good eye-opening experience. But it did bring me to UMass Amherst in their sports management program, and I was really locked in on that avenue. So it's kind of funny how things take curves and twists and turns, and you kind of lean into where you think you're headed, and then something brings a really great eye-opening opportunity in another way. And you kind of just keep going until you find what feels like home. And luckily, when I was at UMass Amherst, I ended up at Amherst College, in terms of being an assistant for the basketball program there, as a way to actually become like to fund my UMass education, because they had a graduate program at Amherst at the time. So coaching wasn't really on my radar. When I was going through college, it became on my radar once I hit graduate school.
So you mentioned got your coaching start at Amherst. You must have fell in love with it there, I would assume, right?
Well, what happened with that is, I kind of realized, like, being part of a collegiate program, there were aspects of the business world that applied to running a program. And then there was what really, the two other phases to me are the competition aspects of it, and then the, sort of the mentorship and the leadership pieces of it. So, kind of Amherst gave me that sort of lens of, wait, I can actually do all the things I want to do, and I'm drawn to, if I were to take this coaching route. And it was a really great 6 years at Amherst. I was there for quite a while. I coached basketball. I coached a little bit of volleyball. I also was a head coach of softball for a year. So I was really hands-on, kind of helping the department in all different ways. I mean, basketball was my bread and butter, but um, to be immersed in the NESCAC early on and understand all the ins and outs of that conference and that league, I think was, really valuable to sort of shaping the D3 model in my mind, and all the ways that I could translate, what I thought that vision looked like here at Smith.
Absolutely. So you took the Smith job in 2008. When you first arrived on campus, what was your vision for the program?
Well, I took the job kind of feeling like there were a lot of really good foundational pieces here. I mean, Smith is clearly a very high academic institution. The campus is absolutely breathtaking. It's in one of the top 50 arts towns in the country. Um, it's part of the 5 college consortium. So we have, a bunch of sort of, social outlets, and also a lot of diversity in the area due to that. And there's a huge population of college students here. I mean, there's close to 30,000 with UMass Amherst. So, you're kind of getting some city events that come to the area. And it just seemed to me like, there's a lot here to sell. There's a lot here to, like, own and really, like, promote. And, I sort of bought into that and felt like, well, the history of the program is, certainly, had some ups and downs, but ultimately I just sort of trusted what I thought I could do here based on what I thought were really massive selling points, and really parts of the college that needed to be really vocalized well to recruit. So I took that job with the belief that it was a place you could build a really strong contender. I always believe that, even from inheriting a 4-21 team. It was, I'm going to take this and I'm going to change it to something that I'm really proud of. And the way I'm wired, it's, if you're all in, your goals are the biggest goal there's available to the program, right? And so, that was my thought right off.
So I think that's a good segue into your recruiting philosophy. I think obviously you mentioned all of the positive aspects about Smith, but it's also very unique in that it is a women's college, and you do have to find, the right student athlete to fit that culture and the uniqueness of a women's institution. So, how do you go about finding those student athletes who are just the perfect fit for Smith?
Well, I think this is again part of the reason why I felt Smith was so unique is that ultimately, like it in my mind, the goal here is to create a program where recruits see Smith as the elite place to go in Division III for women's basketball. And the reason why is because we're resourced in terms of we're not competing with the men's team, and so ultimately, like our team is the spotlight. That is where we are different than other schools, and understanding that and really owning that and building that up has been what we have worked on all these years to really transform the identity of Smith basketball and Smith athletics, right? And I think ultimately we have some incredible leaders here that share the same type of drive and vision in that. And when we recruit today, it's about this is an experience you're not going to get anywhere else, and that's from the crowds we've developed to the success we've had. But more than that, it's putting women in the spotlight. They're not behind any other entity on campus, and that is something that I think makes us elite, and I own it. I own that is what makes us different, but in the best positive ways of being different. And a lot of our players who are on our current team come from co-eds. I actually have not recruited someone from an all-girls high school for a long time, probably 15 years. And so it's been essentially a lot of our players that come from the co-ed high school experience. And, the reason why they came here is because they wanted the spotlight on them. And they were willing to work toward, helping us build a team that really earned that. And so our recruiting starts from really believing that this is probably the best place in the country to play Division III women's basketball. And I truly believe that. But that's a lot of pressure on our staff, and to make sure that we're kind of fulfilling that vision, right? And in terms of the recruiting process, and then getting players here and making sure they stay and making sure they're sort of having the experience that that I have formed in terms of what we believe Smith can provide them. And so we do a lot of things that are very different here, and in terms of building that experience to be unique and filled with the values that we believe in here.
I love that. I love that answer. I think that one of the values that was always my mentors always told me is it's all about the experience. Wins and losses are going to happen, but it's about the experience. So I love that. Speaking of wins, you have a lot of them. Obviously, the past few years have been an amazing run for Smith basketball. How do you continue to sustain that success?
Well, I think obviously expectations and pressure is pretty sky high. And being to three Final Fours in a row and 2 national championship games out of that, and being to 5 NCAA tournaments in a row, and having a 43 home game win streak that span 3 years. I mean, there's a lot that we have built. But ultimately, we're coaching the next team that's going to be prepared to take over when we lose players to graduation, while coaching the current team. And that is really what our entire staff has bought into. Our practices are really pretty intense in terms of how we hold each player accountable to a standard. And our role players and our stars in the future are getting the same type of coaching and sort of intensity behind our coaching as the players who are currently going to be going to battle with each team we face. And so I think that the sustainability is about the culture in our program, the practices that we run, the way that we recruit. And, I think that we have landed on something here that we feel really good about. And then it's a work ethic every single day. I mean, there are choices we all make every day. And I'm just a big believer that, players have choices, our assistant coaches have choices, I have choices. And, being really, really good at something is an active choice every day. So it's sort of the mentality of the sustainability really comes from just the culture and continuing to invest in it in all the ways that make it competitive and handling the pressure and sort of having the vision that the goal is to win a national championship every year. Now that's what it is now. I mean, it wasn't that 10 years ago, but that's what it is now, and that's what we've been able to build toward. So we don't shy away from that. We talk about it, we own it, we try to live in it every day, so that it becomes the norm, not the exception of the season. So there's a lot that goes into that. There's no question. I'm probably giving you a 20% of what goes into it, but ultimately, it's a privilege to be a part of a program that has that type of expectation now. So we're going to treat that with a lot of care.
Absolutely. You mentioned pressure. Obviously, with continued success comes pressure, kind of that bullseye on the back mentality a bit. I'm kind of interested in the mentality of handling the pressure as a coach or a student athlete. Do you think that that's kind of an innate ability, or can you teach it?
Yeah. I think you need some players who innately love the spotlight. I think you have to recruit that a little bit. You need some of those players who are thriving for those big moments and excited to have the ball in their hands when, game is on the line, right? And we've had a lot of those players over the years between, the Jesse Ruffners, the Lauren Bondis, Ali Lando last year, Ali Yamada. Like, we've really had an incredible showing of that type of mentality and mindset. But I also think it's a responsibility of the coaching staff to be building it from player 1 to 16. And I think the way you practice and it's a skill just like anything else, right? Some of it is innate for some players, but for others, it's a skill you have to build. And you have to put them in scenarios that are really going to replicate what they're going to face. And I think that's the responsibility of our coaching staff every year, is to really challenge them in every single way we could possibly think about, understanding the experiences that we've gone through. And, that I think the beauty of these last, 5 years is that we've learned a lot as a coaching staff too. I mean, we've been through all those moments as well, and how we prepare and, how we get our team to buy into game plans and work on the execution at a really high level. We have a lot of control on that. And, I see it as being, a full body of individuals sort of buying in and doing their job. But ultimately, it's a great group every year when you think you have that, the mentality, the mindset, and that your coaching staff's going to work really hard to get everybody ready.
So you've gone out now and won 5 NEWMAC championships in a row. Does every NEWMAC title feel as good as the last? Are there any that stand out?
Yeah, I mean, I would say that like every title's with a different group, right? And a different group has worked really hard. We have a lot of incredible competitive teams in the NEWMAC. And to be fair, a lot of our success is drawn from the strength of the conference and how hard those rivalries and matchups have really pushed our coaching staff and our players to be the best version of ourselves. I mean, ultimately at the end of the day, that's what a conference should be doing for one another, is pushing each other to the point where we're bringing out the best in each other, so that when the opportunity occurs nationally, like, we have prepared each other for those moments, right? And, I particularly go to the year, it's 3 years ago now that, we had Smith, Babson, Springfield all in the NCAA tournament, and all 3 teams advanced extremely far into the NCAA tournament. and ultimately, like, that's the aim of the conference. That's the aim of what I think we should be, focusing on as coaches in terms of the preparation for each other. So, um, a lot of that stems from, our competitors, and again, you learn about yourself the more you're pushed. So I feel very grateful to be surrounded by a coaching group in the NUMAC that really, works hard to game plan, and, tries to come in and put their best sort of effort forward every single day. And I do think we have some really strategic minds in the NUMAC with that type of preparation. So um, yeah, I mean, that's been really fun. But ultimately, the NUMAC championships, I mean, obviously, to win your conference, it's a great achievement, and we spend the day really celebrating that when it happens, and celebrating the seniors of that particular group who led us to that achievement. And ultimately, it's a step along the way to something that we have our eyes set, our goals on, but we need that step in order to achieve the other steps. So they're kind of in the same conversation a lot.
So I want to shift gears a little bit. You talked a little bit about having a different group every year. Um, so just like it's exciting for a new group to win every year, for you, you have a new group of student athletes every year that you're able to mentor day in and day out. So what are the lessons for you as a coach that you're hoping to leave with every player, and even an assistant coach that you're hoping that they leave your program with?
Yeah, I mean, I think number one, work ethic. Our ability to outwork people. It's in our control, right? And again, I think it goes back to what I spoke earlier about choices, choices of being elite, choices of being good, and I think that extends to habits and daily habits, and ultimately, if you're leaving our program um, with exceptional habits that help you to find success, I feel like that's going to translate really well to other parts of your life, whether it's being a parent, um, or being a CEO, or being a teacher, and modeling that for others. So I think that's one really big thing. Another thing for me is I want our players to always understand how to take risks, and to be vulnerable, and to go after something like wholeheartedly. And I just don't see a pathway to that level of success, um, or eliteness, without sort of this vulnerability that needs to be um, really seen and talked about. And to me, that's where you get the boldest players. That's where you can reach your sort of a mindset that's most battle tested, and you build the best trust you can with the group. So that is also something I know we really try to focus on, and hopefully it translates into other parts of their lives when they leave, and in terms of their ability to really share themselves with others in an authentic way, um, that develops and cultivates like the best connection you possibly can, right? And then certainly the last thing is gratitude. I believe it is a great way to live life. There's going to be things in our world that come around, that are challenges and are obstacles, and then there are going to be these tremendous moments of joy, and just brilliance in whatever you're doing. And either avenue, there's a lot to be thankful and grateful for. And in our program, we focus on that. We actually, on Fridays, we do gratitude texts. And it's every Friday that we're together. And our players, it's a habit, but it's something that is driven by what we believe are important things to live by. And so our players, every Friday of the entire year, they've got to find someone in their world that they're willing to share their gratitude with. And I think we've really learned how to, well, I guess I would say we've really learned what that has brought to us, when we are impacting someone else in a way that elevates them, right? So sharing your thankfulness or your gratitude to the Smith kitchen worker who feeds you every single day, right? And thinking about, how you're elevating that particular person, not walking by them and not acknowledging that, but thinking about what their job is every day and how they have impacted you and your experience, and then sharing it, like vocalizing it, right? That to me is an incredible place to live your life. And I believe in it. I do it often myself. And I think it comes back to you in a way that is really soulful. So we do a lot with gratitude. We push the envelope in how we are sort of living our daily lives with that type of mindset. And I think it makes us better people. I think it makes us appreciate each other a lot more. I think it makes us appreciate our journey. And it certainly validates a huge community that has really rallied around us. So I would say those three things are really pretty powerful in terms of our culture and mindset, and things that we actively have in purpose for every day.
That's amazing. It's so easy, even as an adult, to just focus on the negatives. So building that foundation for your student athletes, it really sounds like you're developing them into amazing human beings, which is more important than amazing basketball players, especially at the Division III level, where what you do off the court is sometimes more important than what you do on the court. How do you continue to foster that growth in your players beyond the game of basketball?
Well, I'm actually under the impression that we do gratitude and hard work, and we have vulnerability, which are sort of life skills that are really important for all relationships you're ever going to have, right? But we do all those things with each other, and winning is also really important. So I actually don't trump one over the other. I actually really believe that excellence is across the board, right? And to be fair, if we were winning basketball games, I'm probably not on this podcast, right? So, ultimately the winning gives us a platform to be able to share ourselves and share our stories in a way to see all these other fundamental things that we're doing to become elite, right? But they all intersect. They're all interwoven in the fabric of our DNA. They're not exclusive in these little buckets. They're just, sort of how we view the entire experience. And so how we compete, I could dive into that for a long time, right? That's equally as important. And I think that holds a really big life skill. So, in terms of really understanding our culture, it's not, I don't picture things in buckets where, we've got to be really important about intentional about being great role models. I think that also comes with winning, because, when we have our fans watching us, they're gonna see what happens when we lose and how we respond. And, they're gonna see how we win and how we handle that, right? It's all under one umbrella for me. And I think for women in particular, it's really important to harp on winning, and driving, having the drive for that level of success, and feeling like it's okay to be a competitor. It's okay to go after these lofty goals. It's okay to be sort of elevate the competitiveness in your teammates. And, to me, that's a really important thing for, in particular, women, in the mindset that we drive our women toward, in all aspects. I'll give a great example. I think women need to negotiate contracts much better than we do. And so for me, it's part of the boldness of how we teach here. I find our alums in J-term is a time where we do a bunch of DNA sessions for our players, and they're very out of the box in how we think about developing our DNA and what we're about and who we are and all these different things. So one example I'll give you is that I find I have some lawyers who are alums in different have different roles of being a lawyer in different industries, and they come together and they do a Zoom with our team about how to negotiate contracts. And that to me extends into the like just the core of our mindset here, right? Like our ability to be bold in big moments is absolutely a principle and a foundation of everything the vision is about, right? But there's got to be ways to really like back that up throughout the season. It's not just necessarily like pushing to win every game. So we've really, as a coaching staff, I think have pushed ourselves in what does this look like in all areas, and how can we bring that forth through the basketball experience, understanding that a Zoom with lawyers teaching our women how to negotiate contracts is building confidence. It's building self-esteem. It's building a mindset. It's building a culture within our program. And, you know, that Zoom in particular is something that has always really struck me, as they walk in with one sort of mindset and they leave with a whole nother level of confidence. And, you know, so that to me is like the fabric of what we do. And, you know, I really believe in it. I have two little girls, a 6 and 9-year-old. And, you know, all these things I'm thinking about, you know, being a mom and how I'm preparing my little ones, who are girls, to kind of face the challenges they're going to face. Right. So it's sort of with the mindset of being a coach and also being a mom.
Yeah, I have 3 girls, 6, 8, and just turned 10. And it was funny because your answer just kind of struck me that I was just speaking to my husband earlier about my little one who plays like super competitive, like club soccer, but she's just so nice. You know, like everything is like, she'll go out in the field and like, she's so good, but she always wants to like defer to her teammates and we're just like, how do we like get her to just like have that killer competitive instinct? But I think you're right. Like girls are always kind of, you got to be nice, you know, and how do we teach girls at a young age that it's okay to be competitive?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I totally agree with you. I think we're doing it now in the college level, right? So, you know, it's interesting when you have the insight of being a mom and also raising daughters, right? And that world to also balance your coaching world. And there's things that overlap with both, you know, a 6 and 9-year-old and someone who's turning 20, right? So, you know, I think we dive in, and we find ways to really impact. I help coach my little girls basketball team during my season. So on Sundays, I'm in elementary school gym, and we run a bunch of, additional sort of clinics for that group. And so we're trying to really, kind of share our message in a lot of different ways. And, but yeah, I mean, I understand it. And it's something I feel like it's at a women's college, specifically Smith, we have a greater responsibility to be role modeling and doing. And I think it really fits the mission of Smith, which in my mind is leading from the front, right? And finding ways to be visionary. And, another part I really love about Smith is the fact that we're the birthplace of women's basketball, and obviously when we play Springfield, it's always a little bit of a heated topic, but, in fairness, it was invented in Springfield, but it did not include women, that game was not evolved for women there. So, I love the vision of our bold pioneer over here in Senda and how she developed it for women, and she embraced the sport for women, and how for a while we were playing ourselves. I mean, wasn't another team to play. Right. And so when I think about the vision of Smith back in the 1800s for what the expectation was for women back then, there's a lot to live up to now in 2025. And, it's a big motivator for me, our staff, our players to really embody trying to lead from the front in all of those things as well. I mean, that's our history here. And that's, to me, honoring the Smithies before us, who really championed a lot of change in sports for women.
Absolutely. I think one of the beauties of being in your position is that you are able to mentor and teach and kind of spread your message. And as your student athletes or your assistants move on and coach elsewhere, you're really kind of spreading the message to many more people than you might have just at Smith. Which kind of leads me to you're kind of building a little coaching tree. You have former student athletes and former assistants who have gone on and coached elsewhere. For you, watching them succeed and find that role, and what does that mean to you?
Yeah, I guess when you've been doing this for a while, you start to figure out that, wow, like, yeah, all the assistants who have been so uh incredibly driven to help Smith along the way now have their own programs, and oftentimes you're faced with competing against them, right? And it's a kind of a full circle moment, right? It's one of the things I take the most joy in. I have had the best staffs over the year. I'm so grateful for each person who has been an assistant for me, who has just absolutely believed in the vision and the dream with me, and has worked, tirelessly to make that a reality during their window of time here. And that has really meant the world to me, but it's also connected me in a very um, authentic way with some incredible um, coaches and friends of mine, who now are just some of the best people I know in my world. So I've been grateful for that here at Smith. It has brought me a lot of joy, and then obviously, you know, when we're faced with playing those assistants who now are head coaches and are doing extremely well, yeah, there's an extra push. Yeah, there's definitely an extra push because they know a lot of some of the stuff we do, and certainly there's some pride in playing them. And I've been on both ends of winning and losing on those scenarios. But um, what I take away the most is that I know that the people who come here and spend time here, I know they can recruit. I know that they can build culture, and I know they have an endurance to them, that can really set them up for wherever they go, and whatever dream they have for their futures. Um, and, those things are, I think, really foundationally important in being good at your profession. So I'm, uh, I'm really grateful for those relationships. It certainly made me smile a lot over the years, made me laugh a lot over the years, um, and just really brought me a lot of joy.
So obviously your job at Smith is not done, and I'm hopeful that you're there for many years to come. But when you think about what legacy you might leave behind at Smith when the time comes, what do you hope that your legacy is?
Well, I think it's sustaining a high level of success. Winning a national championship, winning more than one national championship. We're so close, and we've learned a lot from our losses, and I want to be that resilient program. I want to be the program that nationally is known as, wow, they find ways to win, and they find ways to get themselves to these big games. And I think the next step for us is finding a way to in that second game of the Final Four, like, being able to come out on top. I think that's one, and I think the second thing is I really want to be known as a community ambassador for Smith. Someone who really took care of the community here, who really understood how much the community impacts the experience for everyone, and gave to the community as much as we received from it. And so we invest a lot in the people who invest in us, and we have a lot of fans who come to our games who are retired, and this is their winter jam. They're coming, they've got their same seats, they're there early. And then we have faculty and staff here who are just so, they just believe in us. They're believing in us from day one. And then we have this community of young people, both boys and girls. But obviously we focused a lot on developing the youth in our area, and really investing in them with the messages that we use to sort of be the program that we are. And to me, that is really important. That goes back to my roots. That's how I was raised. The ability to really rely on your community and show up for each other and really live a life that is filled with meaningful connection. And I want our players to feel that, so that when they leave, that's a really big part of how they go and impact their worlds wherever they go. So, legacy for me is about winning. It is about being the best we can be here at Smith. I'm not going to shy away from that. That is absolutely the goal. But it's doing it with people to your right and left, front and back, and understanding that, they're coming along for the journey. And there's a lot that goes into, really taking care of your community as well. And I love that part. I truly believe in it, and it gives me a lot of motivation every single year.
That's great. I will say I've been at the NUMAC now this is my third year. Nobody travels better than Smith. Home, away, there's always Smith fans. So the community that Smith has built is obviously incredible. The alumni relationships are incredible. Your legacy now includes Hall of Famer, a Maine Sports Hall of Famer, as we mentioned at the top of the podcast. When you first learned that you were being inducted, what was your initial reaction?
I mean, I think you automatically go to the people who have supported you and, been, sort of allowed you to be your authentic self in the things that you dive into, right? And they support you through all of that. And, my support system from my family with my wife, Carol, and my two little girls, Brooklyn and Harper, to my parents, Lee and Rachel, to my siblings, Karen and Brian. It starts with your roots. It starts with their ability to really support you in some of these lofty goals, or, to be with you when, you have the heartbreak along the way, or, those things are really important in terms of the family. And then obviously, I have the best AD in the country in Kristen Hughes here. And I have had presidents who have really believed in the importance of, women's sports teams being good at a college campus. And, when you have the direction of the cabinet that really believes in, being good and bringing Smith into a conversation nationally every year. I mean, that is really motivation for me and for our players and our coaches. Right. And, you need your allies. This is a journey, right? And there's a lot of things along the way. So I've just felt very a high level of gratitude for being surrounded with such, impressionable, purposeful, intentional, strategic, and visionary women. I mean, that every day really is something that I thrive in, that type of environment. And I've just felt like Smith has really produced that. Over and over. So, I think that's what I think about. I don't necessarily, and obviously the players along the way who have bought in. And I was really actually grateful because I had some players show up. I had a good group of Smith supporters who drove close to 10 hours to be with me during that ceremony. And it brought a tear to my eye to be with them during that event. I had my first coaching partner, Billy McBride. I mean, he drove from Amherst College all the way down to be there, right? And so it's a moment of reflection, really, and it's it's very grounding. And then it makes you hungry to keep pushing, and keep finding ways to grow yourself, your program, the players around you. So that's what I got out of that. It was a really great weekend. I'm super grateful that the state of Maine thought of me worthy to be inducted. So
You certainly, in my opinion, incredibly worthy. You mentioned the word journey. Obviously, you've had an incredible journey thus far. if you can look back from, Dexter, Maine to the national stage now, the past couple of years, are any moments stand out more than others?
Um, yeah, I have a few moments. I mean, I think that um, I had an incredible team in 2012 and 13. And this is when Babson had their big three players, and they were on their run, and making a sort of a big NUMAC statement. But in 2012 and 13, uh, we were an at-large bid in the first at-large bid that the NUMAC had ever received, and on the women's basketball side, and we went to USM to play, and they were ranked. I think they were 7th in the country. We were in their pod, and um, it was Ithaca was the other school, and Colby Sawyer was the other school. So that was our pod, and it was George was coaching at Colby Sawyer, and Dan was coaching at Ithaca, and he still is. And Gary Fifield was the coach, legendary coach at USM. And I had gone to basketball camps because I'm from the state of Maine, over at USM as a little girl. And Gary was running those camps, and he had incredible players, and there was obviously a source of pride in the state of Maine for USM, because back then they were going to the Final Four quite a bit. And it was my first, NCAA tournament. And we had this team, and this team taught me so much. It was a team that was led by Devin Cortochi, who's an assistant at Brown right now, and Rosa Drummond, who's a doctor right now. But they led the team in a way. Sydney Parkmon, we got to add her. She's a lawyer right now. And this team really showed me what Smith was capable of. We went down to USM in the first game. We are set to play them. And I want to set the stage here. They had been to 29 NCAA tournaments, 29, which is unthinkable. And this was our first. And we went in and we prepared like crazy. And our players ran right toward that moment. They didn't shy away one bit. They believed in themselves. They believed in our game plan. They took on that moment. And from the tip, Rosa Drummond hit a 3-pointer by the student section, like 2 feet from the sideline. I wasn't sure what she was doing, honestly, but she took this shot and swished it, and she just looked them in the eye, and we won by 28. It was never a game. And that was the moment to me. That was a massive moment. I mean, it's one thing to get to the NCAA tournament. It's another thing to get in that large bid. But to get into that moment and own it, and, be bold in it, and to believe in who we were, and not this powerhouse, and be, and be intimidated by that, but to say this is an incredible opportunity. That moment for me was a real catalyst, both in what the potential was here at Smith, and what we could create here. So I think about that team a lot, actually. And, obviously we've had incredible teams who have done amazing things. But there's always that moment, in along the journey, and that team was it for me.
Yeah, there's always certain moments that stand out. That's a great one. I think that the NCAA experience is just amazing for student athletes as well. I went to one, and that still is a moment that stands out to me. And for those of you who have been lucky to be to multiple, I imagine that's always such a fun experience. We've looked back a little bit. Now we want to look forward a little bit. Obviously, the 25-26 season is underway. Practices have now been underway for a few weeks now. You're opening your season this weekend. What's next for Smith basketball? I guess obviously, you've been to 3 straight Final Fours, 2 straight national championships. How do you keep raising the bar?
Well, the goal is to win it. Like, that's the next progression, right? And, to get back to another Final Four, to be a team that's gone 4 years in a row. I'm not sure the record books, but that's got to be up there in terms of Division three. So I mean, there's some good things to look for and to achieve. And we talk about it again. Like I'm, it's not something we hide from. That is part of our conversation here. That's maybe not the way every coach would approach their season, but this is the way we do it here. And it's an early conversation about what we're fighting for, what the everyday is going to look like, what the end result is, right? And it's tying it into a bunch of things, right? It's having this team believe that they're the team that can do it. It's having this team take ownership that they're going to do it for the other teams who kind of paved a way for them, right? Made it possible for them to really like see this clear path of how to get there. And it's ultimately like now you got to get down to the daily grind of trying to be elite. And it is a grind, and it takes tremendous endurance. And what we're really fortunate on is that I believe our superpower is that like my starting point guard only knows going to a national championship game. That's her entire career,
It's a
is
nice
bringing her
career.
team to a national championship game. That's all she knows. She doesn't know anything different than that. My entire junior class only knows going to a Final Four. They know, there's nothing that is in their mind other than getting to these, sort of pinnacles. So it's utilizing your experience, and utilizing their experience to really try to benefit the season that's ahead. And I think that is strategic, and I think that is has intention about it, behind it. And you've got to be really purposeful with how you use it. But that's something that we get to own. I mean, 3 in a row, no other team has done that. So that is something that we need to utilize to help us prepare for the mindset of the season that's in front of us. Now, obviously, every season, we're playing a lot of good teams. Our SOS is really high. We play a lot of NESCACs. We're flying in Cal Lutheran this year to play in our tip off, and they were a round of 32 NCAA team that didn't lose much, right? And so, like, the challenges are coming, and they're going to be really hard. And we're going to have to find ways to win when it's ugly, and we're going to have to find ways to win through execution and when we're not shooting well, and through our defense when our offense is off, or all these different variables. But it's in the idea of we're a team that's capable of winning in a lot of different ways, and we've got to believe in that, and we've got to prepare that way. So yeah, the season's ahead, and honestly, there's going to be a lot of curveballs, and we're going to have a lot of work to do. And to be fair, the past success doesn't really give you a lot this year outside of the experience. So this team really has their own journey to take on, and really their own identity to build, and their own challenges that they're going to have to come through on to be sort of in the lane of some of these other teams we've had. So we have a lot of work to be done. I don't know if we're really, thinking too much outside of the daily grind of it right now, but, got to enjoy the grind and got to have the endurance.
Yeah, basketball is a long journey. The season is long. So there's always a lot of ups and downs, but it's like you said, it's a grind. I think that on a national stage, women's basketball is having kind of its moment. Obviously with the Caitlin Clark and Paige Beckers and these kind of big time stars, and the NBA, the WNBA is getting a little more notoriety. What excites you about women's basketball, the future of women's basketball?
I actually have a great sort of moment story. When Caitlin Clark was in the Final Four, um, uh, my entire staff, we were there watching, and we were fortunate enough because Smith is the sponsor of the Women's Basketball Hall of Fame trophy. that we were in the Hall of Fame box during that game. So we were kind of overlooking the lower bowl. And what we saw during Iowa playing in their semifinal game, what we saw was a crowd filled with, fans who were men. And they were not necessarily there with their daughters. They were a group of guys coming to watch women's basketball for the fun of watching the game. And they had their faces painted and they were in the gear and they were all in, and it was to me it was a different crowd than we have seen at all the other Final Fours over the years. And, it really kind of, to me, identified that the sport is growing in a way where our women athletes are being valued very differently for their talent and their ability. And, prime time's hitting more and contracts are higher and NIL deals are growing for them. And, it's business plus sport, right? Obviously at that level, but it's great to see there's a shift and who's appreciating these elite talents. And, I just think we gotta continue the momentum and continue to bring fans in and do what we can at all of our levels to continue to promote the game. But we certainly need the stars like Caitlin Clark, Angel Reese, all of the current ones, Paige Becker's, like to continue to be bold enough so that others are able to follow them. And that will, I think, continue to fuel the sport in such a positive way.
Yeah, it is funny. I'm not like old, but my time has passed. But I'm always like fighting the fight. Like Diana Taurasi was better than Caitlin Clark, but like it doesn't matter because it is what it is. But all three of my girls have their little Caitlin Clark basketballs, and so it's exciting that it's growing. And like you said, that it's not just women; it's everybody's invested. And so, as a fan myself, I'm excited to see that growth. Obviously, I know you're in season, you're busy. I don't want to take up too much of your time, but I do have a few quick hitters to end our session here. Favorite gym you've coached in other than your own?
Well, I mean, I would want to argue you that it would be my own gym at Ainsworth, which I do think is the favorite gym of mine. But, I've had a lot of really good memories at Bowdoin. And I also think the community in Brunswick does a really good job of supporting their women's basketball program over there. And we've had some really great battles over there. So I'm going to say outside of Ainsworth, I'll go with the gym over at Bowdoin College.
I would never force you to say Ainsworth wasn't your favorite outside of Ainsworth. What's your go-to pregame ritual?
I'm a very superstitious person, actually. So I have a lot of, sort of routines and rituals before the game. I would say that I like to prepare during the day, and then I like to go home. And we dress up at Smith, so we're old school like that in terms of not wearing the sweats to the game. So I like to get ready at home. It really sets me and get into my outfits there, and then come back to the gym. And that little break is a time for me to sort of like get myself mentally ready for what's to come that night. And usually on my drive, I will make sure I'm paying attention to the music I'm listening to right before I walk into the gym. So, it's we all have our scenarios, but for me, at home games, that's definitely a routine of mine.
What's the music you're usually listening to?
I cannot share that.
Okay. Well, now I'm going to die interested in that. My deathbed. What does Lynn Hersey listen to on the way to games? The best advice you've ever received from a mentor, sorry.
Actually, clear as day, Brenda Fries, Maryland coach. I went up to her when I was, just took the Smith job actually. And I asked her, I said, you're not one of the brand name ACC teams at the time with the Dukes and North Carolinas and all these sort of, really like visible, sort of brands for recruits to go to. But yet she had been to a bunch of Final Fours, and at that time Maryland was, really out performing the Dukes and UNCs. And, I went up to her and I said, listen, like, I want to know your mindset on this. Like, what do you do? And she just said, not everybody wants to join someone else's legacy, and there are those recruits who are going to be ballers for you who want to build their own. And those are the ones I find. That's what she was saying. And I thought, yeah, that's a great way to go about everything. So, that was a really good conversation for me. Best advice.
One word your players would use to describe you.
Competitive.
That fits. I can tell.
Yep.
Got to. You don't win by not being competitive. All right, last one. As this is a NewMac podcast, favorite NewMac memory?
Well, this might seem a little different, but I'm going to say this. When I think about the NewMac, I think about representing a conference. I think about representing something bigger than Smith. Smith's involved in the NewMac. So I actually think some of my best memories is actually seeing Patrick at the Final Fours and being there on the sidelines, in this particular scenario, obviously rooting for NewMac and for Smith, and having the conference support as we go out and, battle other conferences and other schools. And that has meant a lot to me. And that to me is the investment that, that really strikes me as a big motivator. When people invest in you, you invest back. And, those moments have really hit me. He's been in a couple of postseason press conferences at the Final Four level. And I don't always see him in the stands because I'm so in the game, but then when I see him there, it hits me. And I've been very grateful for his effort to come out in those big moments for us. So that's my actually favorite NewMac moment.
Oh, he'll love that. He will love that. I will say I made him bring me back a t-shirt. So I have a Smith Final Four t-shirt.
That's awesome.
But Patrick's amazing. And I just want to thank you again for joining us. I know you're busy right now, so I want to thank you for taking time out of your schedule to jump on with us. We are so excited to watch how the 25-26 season unfolds, and we're all rooting for you. So good luck.
Thanks, Lindsay. Thanks for your time, for organizing this, for the work you put into preparing for it. And, I think the podcast is such a great way to hear stories from different teams and coaches and players alike, and, brand the NewMac as one of the premier conferences in the country. It's fun to actually follow along and see the other sports, and the other teams as they go out nationally and compete. I mean, that's sort of the pride of being part of something a little bit bigger than yourself. So just wishing all the other, schools good luck out there too, as they go on their journeys. And certainly when you're facing that national competition, that's when it gets really, it's bigger than your own school. So, it's, good luck to all the schools who are making the runs at the NCAA tournament as well.
Awesome. Thank you so much.